welcome to GameSec. We're talking about more piss-poor ports.
Yeah, these are always episodes that are fun to do, but also not fun to do, because you get to play a really cool game, and then you get to play a really bad port of a cool game.
Indeed. So without further ado, let's check out some of these piss-poor ports. Strider was released to the arcades from Capcom in 1989. It's a cool action platformer where you play a ninja taking down bad guys who came from the third moon. It's short and sweet with a lot of variety in the stages and the music, which really made it unique in its time. It came home to the NES, but it's a completely different game altogether, so we can't really count that here. But it's certainly worth a play. The Sega Genesis got a really good port in 1990. Yes, it's still just as short of a game, but it was a very faithful port for the time, and it was a hot commodity way back then. That's because it was the first game with 8 MB memory. And they needed all that to pack all 5 stages of ninja action. Okay, that's enough of the good ports. You want to see some crappy ones, right? Well, 4 years after the Genesis release, NEC Avenue released Strider on CD for the PC Engine CD only in Japan. Not only that, but this game requires the arcade card, which gives the system a total of 18 megabits of RAM, which is way more than the standard Duo or even the Sega Cd. And what that theoretically means is that one level here has more than twice the memory of the entire Genesis game. So it's gotta be awesome, right? Oh, hell no. First of all, they simply could not have chosen worse colors for this game. This console is actually better than the Genesis as far as its color capabilities go, so why does the game look 10 times worse? Also, the artwork itself on pretty much everything from the sprites to the backgrounds is very poorly drawn and not very faithful to the source material. And to top off the visual crustiness, there's tons of flicker everywhere. The PC Engine is way better than this. And the control even has issues too. Strider has never really been about super precise control even at his best, but this port manages to make it even worse. Okay, check this out. I'm trying to get this power up here, but there's no way I can reach it. Sure as hell doesn't stop me from trying though. Damn! I can't get it no matter what. Super fun. But because of this control, the game feels very sloppy and extremely unpolished. The scrolling snaps around if you change directions on the D-pad, which can be kind of annoying. Since Strider is so short, they decided to add a brand new stage in an attempt to give it a little more girth. What's funny is that the stage can be turned on and off, and it defaults to off from the options screen, almost like they're ashamed of it. The stage is okay, but it's certainly nothing special. They did, of course, add some decent animated cutscenes, just like you'd expect in a CD game. And also, since it's on CD, each boss and mid-boss has something to say to you before you fight them. Everyone's gotta talk. Fortunately, you can skip any of this if you want. And the music actually isn't bad at all, it's just that not all of it's here, and that kinda makes me a little sad. All in all, this version is playable, and it does have a couple of redeeming features here and there, but it should have been so much better given how late it came out and the hardware required to run the game. While we're here, we might as well check out the Sega Master System Strider. This 1991 port is the worst of the worst. It was developed by Tiertex, the same people behind the god-awful Strider Returns that everyone wants to pretend never existed. Ew. It's like they knew nobody would buy this version, so why even bother trying? Actually, since it's Tiertex, this is probably the best they were capable of doing, and that's sad. Firstly, check it out. He doesn't even move his arms when he swings his sword. It just swings itself from his pelvic region? Okay, what exactly is he swinging? Come on, Sega, this is a family game. Next, look how empty the backgrounds are. They barely even resemble the arcade at all. There's hardly any enemies anywhere, and you spend most of your time just wandering around the boring stages. And the control is super floaty and extremely slow. I can't even tell what's going on when I fight this boss. My dick sword only swings once for every 5 or 6 button presses here. Oh, and there's only 2 music tracks at all, the stage theme and the boss theme. And so far, I've only heard the boss theme in level 1. And the music itself does not sound good at all. Again, they didn't even try. This one is also really difficult. The enemies make up for their sparseness by shooting tons of hard-to-avoid bullets at you. It is quite easy to die. There's also a countdown timer here that's crazy fast. I've died near the beginning of a stage before. What the hell? And of course, there are no continues. Bottom line, I do not recommend getting your Strider fix on the Sega Master System.
Pit Fighter was a game that I'll admit that I probably threw a couple of bucks into the arcade. Since it was all the rage at the time and a few of my friends really liked it, I figured what the hell. I'll also admit that I did like the idea behind this one. There's no rules. It's primitive, unregulated fighting where anything goes. Well, anything you can do with your limited moves, that is. You pick one of 3 characters and illegally battle your way through round after round of opponents, all while earning piles of cash. The stages all have lots of things going on around you. Every now and then, if you get too close to the side, somebody will attack you, so watch out. Fights are littered with barrels and weapons, all for you and your opponents to try to get the advantage. Not too long after, the game was released for home systems. The Genesis received an OK port of the game by Sterling Silver Software, and pretty much everything is intact. The gameplay is very similar to the arcade with all the weapons. You can even throw swastikas at your enemy, which I'm guessing really aren't swastikas but throwing stars. But for some reason they do share the same design. Just like the arcade, you have a life bar and even continues to use if you die. The fighting is balanced and it's pretty easy to get the advantage over your opponent. The only thing that it doesn't do is zoom in and out of the action like the arcade version. And everything is of course way smaller and looks less detailed. Then came the Super Nintendo release by THQ, but it was curiously developed by Tengen. Everything about this release is pure garbage. First thing you notice when you play is that the control feels dead. You try your best to do punches, kicks, and grabs, but nothing happens. Your character just sits there and gets beat down. And it won't be long before you just start button mashing in hopes that anything will happen. Instead of a life bar, you now have a number at the top of the screen that will count down to 0, and then you're dead. And when you die, it's game over. They completely forgot to put a continue system in here. Why would they even do that? Do they really want people to hate their product? It seems so because I'm really hating this game right now. So yeah, with horrible controls and no continues, you're probably never gonna beat this one. The best I ever did was get to the second round. I'll admit that I only tried about 25 times before I said, F this! Even if you do get past the first round, your life doesn't even refill. Hey look, I made it to the second round, but I only have 13 health points. My opponent has 260. I never bet against myself, but I'm pretty sure I have no chance here. Yep, no chance. 5 seconds after the match starts, my game is over. The graphics and sound are both bare bones at best, a far cry from the arcade. They didn't even include any of the weapons for you to pick up and use. Not that it matters since the game is impossible. This is unforgivable, as the weapons are what gave the original any enjoyment since the fighting is so dull. Also, nobody in the crowd will ever come out to take cheap shots at you like they do in other versions. It's very obvious that no effort went into developing this title.
I was super excited when X-Men vs. Street Fighter came to the Saturn in Japan. It requires the 4 meg RAM card, and I already modified my Saturn with a region switch, so playing this one would pose no problem. This is an amazing crossover game featuring characters from, you guessed it, X-Men and Street Fighter. It works pretty well too. You pick 2 characters from a selection of 16 choices and your opponent or the computer does the same. During the match as you fight, you can switch between your 2 characters at any time by pressing your punch and kick simultaneously. This can be helpful in preventing a character from dying, so it actually becomes a bit strategic at times. Your character actually heals a little bit off screen. You can also bring in the second character for a combined attack sometimes. These tag team battles are basically one giant round and you fight until both of your opponent's characters are dead or until both of your characters die. At least I like to pretend that they die. The screen can scroll really high due to the influence from Capcom's Marvel fighting games. There's also a couple of places where you can discover new areas of the stage if you do enough damage to the ground, for example. Overall, it's just an amazing game in every way. They say that the Saturn version here is an arcade-perfect port. I don't know how true that is, but it's close enough for me, that's for damn sure. It's just really a shame that it wasn't released outside of Japan.
Gene, slide. Kinetic. Kinetic. Cajun strike.
Several months later, however, Capcom brought X-Men vs. Street Fighter to the PlayStation and it got released worldwide. Thanks to the PlayStation's limited memory, tons of things were cut from this version. First and foremost is a tag battle. This is literally game-breaking, as now it's not even the same game. Although you pick two characters as usual, you can't switch between them during gameplay. In fact, the only time you ever see them is during special attacks encounters where they briefly appear. And instead of one big round where you keep fighting until your opponent is done, this one is divided into the best 2 out of 3 rounds like any other fighting game. That means your matches will last longer and that the music will never change to another character's theme during that match. The only exception to this is the final boss fight, which is only 1 round. Your characters can heal a little bit if they're not constantly being attacked though, and that makes up for them not being able to heal off screen. Next, a metric butt ton of animation has been cut out. Everything just seems so choppy in comparison to the Saturn version. Some characters don't even animate during the character select screen. I guess that's asking too much of the PlayStation. You can totally tell that a lot of frames are missing as you fight. But at least the large majority of the background animation is still here. Oh, and there is a lot of slowdown as well. I mean, why the hell not, right? The game generally feels a bit slower all around, but when you do a special, it really starts to lag. Oh man, my poor PlayStation. I hope this isn't hurting you too bad. Finally, there is a lot of loading and it's really slow. Here's how fast the Saturn version loads.
Ready. Come on, mon ami. Fight!
Not bad, right? Here's how fast the PlayStation version loads. Keep in mind that it has less data to load. I mean, there's fewer characters, less animation, and less RAM. But it takes way longer. Don't worry, I'm still here. Okay, there we go. Other than all of these flaws, the game is still playable. It's just not the X-Men vs. Street Fighter game that it should be. It's a really sad port.
Well, these are some pretty good piss-poor ports we got going on here. I know I didn't like Pit Fighter, and that Strider, well.
I know, really bad. I don't like tier attacks.
Yeah, I've never heard of him, and I never want to hear him again.
Sadly, I think you might. Let's get back into it.
Well, here I go, talking about Golden Axe again. You'd think I'm some sort of fanboy or something like that with the way that I rave about it in nearly every episode. Well, truth be told, I am a fanboy for this game, but it's only the second time that I've talked about it here on the show. I hate to mention it here, but it's true, Golden Axe had a few ports that were, well, maybe not completely piss poor, but they did leave something to be desired. Joe talked about the PC Engine CD port in our last piss poor ports episode, so I won't mention that one today, even though I just kinda did. The arcade original is amazing. I loved it and I played it quite a bit and I always just wanted more. I always wanted to take it home with me, but a serious lack of money put an end to that ideal real quick. Luckily the Genesis was there and it got for the most part a very good port of the arcade game. Sure, it was missing a lot of voices and maybe a bit of scrolling here and there, but it was still very good. And it had a few extra stages. And Sega, being the good company that it is, didn't want to leave out the dying Master System and decided to port the game there as well. Well, you can imagine with the limitations of the Master System, there had to be cuts here and there. And there are. I know it's not gameplay, but I've got to mention the cover art for this game. Apparently one of the publisher's kids got bored in history class and drew a picture. The dad apparently liked it so much that he used it. Thanks for nothing, you stupid kid. Although he is good at drawing skeletons. They look very nice. Anyway, this is only a single player game. If you have a friend over, too bad for them because they're just gonna watch as you play. I mean, I guess I could let them play as I watch, but I'm not that nice, so they can watch me. Next, you can't choose a fighter. You only get the dude Tyrek, which kinda sucks as you know I like Tyrus better. If it's any consolation, you can at least pick what type of magic that you want. Of course I chose fire cause it's simply the coolest. But when you use your magic, the whole screen goes black and the only thing visible is said magic, character, and enemy sprites. As far as gameplay goes, it's really fast and has less animation, which makes it look really jerky. And I mean it's jerky. The way this one works is that the sprites are actually part of the background image, so there's no flicker, but this results in really jerky gameplay. The game is enjoyable, but it's missing a lot of what you're used to in the Genesis and arcade versions. Next, the game got ported to the Game Boy Advance via the Sega Smash Pack. This is a port of the Genesis version, and given that the Game Boy Advance is more powerful than the Genesis, it should be a perfect port, right? Well, it's not, and we can thank Codefire for that. Firstly, the game is zoomed in. You don't get to see nearly as much of the playfield that you do on the Genesis version. This is due to the resolution of the Game Boy Advance being less than the Genesis, so it gets cropped. Secondly, let's mention the sound. For some reason, there's only 2 background tunes that alternate between the game's levels and there's no boss music. This annoys me beyond belief. I've played the original more than enough to know what tune belongs to what level. When I start the 3rd stage and hear something different, it really pisses me off. Not to mention that the music sounds off anyways. It sounds flat and it's kind of grating and nothing near the quality of the Genesis music. A few other things that I've noticed are certain graphical effects. Like in the first level where day turns to night before the boss fight, it doesn't happen here because the developer is lazy. Seriously, there's no excuse for this version to be inferior. Even with these issues, the game is playable and I did beat it and I found it actually easier than the Genesis version. If this is your only option to play the game, then so be it, but if not, play it somewhere else.
Turbo Outrun from Sega was released to the arcades in 1989 as an upgrade to regular Outrun cabinets. It's a really cool racer, but it doesn't really feel that much like Outrun. You can't select your path at the end of each stage, and you can't select your music either. But you are still driving a nice red Ferrari, so there's that. Your goal in this one is to race against the clock across the country from the east to the west coast. And as the name implies, you have a turbo boost that you can engage if your engine is ready. But you can't use it if your engine is too hot. Also, I don't advise using it on sharp turns. That's stupid. Don't be like me. You'll crash. Just don't do it, okay? Anyway, after a bunch of stages, you can improve the ability of your car. I recommend choosing the better gripping tires, but since I'm an idiot, I of course chose the faster engine. This makes it even harder to take the corners because you go so damn fast. There's also tons of obstacles on the road itself for you to deal with. Never mind that normal traffic is driving right through everything without a care in the world. How do I know it's normal traffic and not just a bunch of other racers? Well, because sometimes there's a cop car that comes after you, which is kind of weird, honestly. Still, the game is definitely fun with some pretty damn nice graphics for their time. I love all that scaling, and a lot of the music is really good too. Turbo Outrun got a few home ports, mostly on European home computers, but let's check out the 1992 Mega Drive release. This one was never released in North America for the Genesis, and I am A-okay with that. I really hate this game. First of all, just look at it. The graphics aren't exactly what I'd call on par with other Genesis releases. What's more is that the frame rate is absolutely atrocious. The road itself doesn't even update at 30 frames per second, and the background scrolling and the such only update at 12 frames per second. Yeah, seriously, I actually counted. Then this came out in 1992, the console was already 4 years old. This gives the game a very choppy and disorienting feel, especially since it tries to move so damn fast. Next up is the music. I'd be amazed if they managed to get more than 3 whole instruments to play simultaneously. The composer for this game clearly hated his job, and his life, and yours. Finally, this game is ridiculously difficult. It barely gives you any time at all. I tried all of the difficulties from very easy to very hard, and you know what I noticed? Absolutely nothing! There's literally no difference at all! You get the same amount of time and the same amount of enemy cars, and the enemy cars can often be very difficult to avoid. But this is all because I was playing with common sense. I mean, you don't want to use the turbo boost on a tight corner, right? That certainly didn't work in the arcade version. But I'm telling you, the only way to get through this game is to spam the turbo any and every time it becomes available, no matter what situation you're currently in, and then drive normally. Physics be damned. It doesn't actually make the turns any more difficult at all. So just keep pressing that turbo button if you want to get anywhere, but seriously, turning the game off is still preferable. Oh, and guess who developed this turd? That's right, TierTex! I'm wondering, what are some of the qualifications they ask of their potential employees? In order to work for TierTex, you must be unskilled, despise quality, and have a passion for laziness. You must also have a seething resentment for people who enjoy playing video games. F those people. Low pay guaranteed. So, I guess I'm not surprised at how this one turned out. I'm just amazed that Sega let them handle it. Pick this game up if you want to die a little.
Mortal Kombat is the arcade fighting game that people went insane crazy for back in the early 90s. They loved its use of digitized graphics for the combatants and over-the-top violence. Hell, even I at one point started to like the game and did my best to learn finishing moves because I wanted to see the gory scenes. It was a huge step up from what Pit Fighter was trying to do. I was never really good at playing this though, and you'll notice today that I'm still not very good at playing it.
Sonya wins.
The game got ported to all major systems and handhelds, even though some of them shouldn't have been made. I've heard a lot of people piss and moan about the Sega Cd port here. They say that you can't skip the FMV intro and that the loading is agonizing, among other things. Well, let's put that to rest right here because the Sega Cd port honestly isn't that bad. You can skip the opening FMV by pressing the handy start button on your controller. The loading times really aren't that bad, certainly not longer than the majority of other CD games on the market. It's faster than X-Men vs. Street Fighter is on the PlayStation by a significant amount. And not only that, but you get the arcade music in most of the voices. So this is not a piss-poor port at all.
Scorpion wins.
But now, let's take a look at the Gameboy port. The first thing you're going to notice is that there's only 6 fighters to choose from. Poor old Johnny Cage got the axe. I'm not sure the process on how they choose who to leave out, but I'm glad it was Cage. He always seems so smug with his stupid sunglasses. Anyway, he's probably happy he was left out since this port really sucks. Once you pick your fighter and you get going, you're going to wonder if your Game Boy is broken. You'll be hitting buttons and trying to pull off some of the simplest moves to no avail. Seriously, I couldn't do any basic moves. I tried Raiden's lightning throw thingy constantly, but only ended up doing his punchy thingy, which never helped. I eventually gave up on that and just accepted that it's impossible to do anything but basic kicks and punches. However, your opponents have no problem pulling off these moves. It's very frustrating inputting commands constantly and seeing nothing happen. Sound effects are completely left out of this version. Well, one of them is still in there, and that's when your opponent hits the ground. Other than that, there's nothing except for the game's soundtrack. The next thing that will piss you off is how choppy the game is. Just feast your eyes on this and tell me that that's not ugly. Oh, and it runs really slow compared to other versions. I know that you're thinking that given this game is on a puny Game Boy cartridge, there's no way I should expect it to be on par with console versions. And my answer to that would be to look at Mortal Kombat 2 on the Game Boy, which was released a year later. This installment moves and plays like it should with speed and smooth gameplay. There's voices in here, the gameplay isn't nearly as choppy, and best of all, you can pull off all your moves. Even fatalities are easy to pull off. This is what the first game should have been. So yeah, I'm sorry, but the first game on the Game Boy needs to be called out for what it is, and that's a piss poor port.
All right, those are some more piss poor ports for you, and oh my god,
I'm piss poor ported out.
really disappointed in some of these ports.
Yeah, me too. I mean, who isn't? Who wants to play a game that you actually really liked, and the only system you might have is the one that it got ported to, and it's just garbage.
Really?
Like, it just makes you really sad.
It really, really does. What are some piss poor ports you guys are fond of, and maybe ironically? Let us know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
Book? When did you start reading?
Well, Dave, it's not an actual book. .mu sent this to promote the release of East Origin on the Xbox One. See? It's fake. It's got a hidden compartment with stuff inside.
Dude, that is so awesome. You always get the cool stuff. What is this? This looks delicious.
Dude, that's mine. They sent it to me. I want to drink it.
I want some too, but I've got the corkscrew.
Let's open it and try it.
Okay. Smells good.
Dude, I want to take the first drink.
All right, well, go ahead. All right, yeah.
Oh my good. Oh.
How is it?
Oh. I don't think .mu likes GameSack, Dave.
What?
Oh.
Are you dying?
Yes, very much so.